Okay, you guys, so this is where I left, page 26. So I'm going to continue this now. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, 1884 to 1943. 57-year-old Admiral Yamamoto was the mastermind behind the Pearl Harbor attack. Yamamoto lived for a while in the United States, first as a student at Harvard University and later as a Japanese official in Washington, D.C. During those years, he developed a deep secret for America, just like how Wall-E developed a glitch. The curious robot from the movie Wall-E. I watched that when I was little, but let's continue. Let's keep studying. When World War II broke out, he had concerns about Japan siding with Germany. He thought it would lead to a war with the United States, a war that Japan could not win. Yamamoto believed air power was the way to win wars. Now, he even foresaw that sea battles could be won by firing at ships from the air. Before battles at sea meant big ships fighting against other big ships, Yamamoto oversaw the building of a massive air fleet in Japan. By 1941, the Japanese had nearly 5,000 warplanes. His planning for the Pearl Harbor attack proved too brilliant. His planning for the Pearl Harbor attack proved to be brilliant. His planning for the Pearl Harbor was proved to be brilliant. His planning for the Pearl Harbor attack proved to be brilliant. Okay, there I said it. Yamamoto was tracked and killed by U.S. Army troops in 1943 for his part in the attack on Pearl Harbor. Chapter 3 is top secret, so here we go. The attack was top secret right from the start. Let's start over. The attack was top secret right The attack was top secret right from the attack. Let's do it. Let me try again. The attack was top secret right from the start. Oh yes, I said it. Japanese fighter pilots had months of training, but they didn't know what they were training for. They were kept in the dark. Right before the attack. The attack was set in motion. There, I said it clearly, with my eyes closed. Didn't even have to worry about it failing. Very few in the Japanese military knew about the plan either. For many months, not even Emperor Hirohito was told. Neither was the mild-mannered Japanese ambassador in Washington, D.C. He learned about the attack after it happened. By mid-November, we're in November now, the Japanese fleet was ready to depart. But how could giant aircraft carriers leave Japan without being seen by U.S. spies? The answer: they did not leave in a group. The warships began leaving Japan one at a time, going by separate routes to escape attention. Eventually, all the ships would meet up at a remote island north of Japan. There, I said it, you guys. The route was high, though. The route was through rough, icy seas. This made it less likely that they'd be spotted by ships from other countries. Radios were turned off. Now U.S. Navy planes could not pick up their signals. Oil tankers chugged behind the fleet, so that the warships never had to stop in ports to refuel. The Japanese fleet numbered some 30 ships in all. There were 6 aircraft carriers bearing hundreds of warplanes. The other ships came along to protect the carriers or refuel them. There was also a fleet of submarines in the convoy. The submarines were the only vessels that would be going all the way to Pearl Harbor. 5 of the submarines, called midget subs. Before dawn on the day of the track, the midgets were supposed to slip inside the harbor. They would lie on the dark harbor bottom until the bombing began. Then the tiny subs would open fire, attacking the U.S. from underwater. Yeah, use my Lightning McQueen voice from Cars 1, 2, and 3. But we're not talking about Lightning McQueen now. Excuse me. We're talking about this. The commander in charge of the ships at sea was Vice Admiral Nagumo. He knew that there was a chance that the attack could still be called off. Japan and the United States reached an agreement. His orders were to return to the homeland. Yeah. However, an agreement seemed less likely every day. Washington continued to talks, not knowing that Japan was talking peace and planning war. President Roosevelt offered to lift the trade embargo if Japan withdrew its troops from Indochina. It's a combination of, combination of Indonesia and China, which is called Indochina. Yeah. That made Japan furious. On December 1st, Japanese military leaders met with the emperor to urge him to go to war. Prime Minister Tojo grimly reported, "Matters have reached the point where Japan must begin war to preserve her empire." The emperor agreed. The next day, Nagumo received a message. Climb Mountain Nitaka. It said, Climb Mountain Nitaka. It said, Mountain Nitaka was the highest mountain in the Japanese Empire. The message was a secret of saying, "Proceed! Attack Pearl Harbor!" Yeah! Chapter 4. Trouble at Dawn. While most people at Pearl Harbor were sleeping, Commander Mitsuo Fuchida prepared for battle. Fuchida donned a red shirt. I have a red shirt at home, If bullets hit him, the shirt would hide signs of blood from his troops. The Japanese fleet had stopped 230 miles north of Hawaii. From this spot, attack planes would take off from the carriers in 2 waves, an hour apart. Fuchida saw with alarm that the seas were very rough, dangerous for takeoff. Water burst over the decks of the carriers, which rocked back and forth. Crews desperately hung to the planes on deck to stop from falling overboard. But the day of battle had come. There was no turning back. Gotta get it done. Shortly after 6 o'clock a.m., permanently known as 6 a.m., or whatever it is, Fuchida gave the order to take off. One by one, airplanes from all 6 carriers roared into the sky. The pilots circled until 183 planes were in the air. Fuchida was in the lead plane. The other pilots followed behind him. Pearl Harbor was 90 minutes away. At Oahu, a small ship called the USS Ward was on early morning patrol near the entrance to Pearl Harbor. Near the entrance to Pearl Harbor. Near the entrance to Pearl Harbor. At 6:45, lookouts suddenly spotted something sticking out of the water. It looked like a buoy, but it wasn't. It was the conning tower of an enemy submarine. Wow, that's so bad. That's so bad. Commence firing. The patrol boat commander ordered. Commence firing! The patrol boat commander ordered. His crew fired at the sub, first with guns, and then with depth charges, underwater bombs. The submarine exploded in a gush of foam. Although they did not know it then, the sailors had just sunk a Japanese midget submarine. Without delay, the commander radioed in a report of the sinking. The message went slowly from one office to the next. Finally, it reached top headquarters. The report caused quite a stir, said one witness. However, the officers thought it was not important enough to put the whole fleet on alert. No action was taken. Another danger sign quickly followed at 7:02. Two young privates were on duty on a lonely raider station on the northern tip of Oahu. Suddenly a huge blip appeared on the radar screen. It looked like a group of 50 or more planes was just 140 miles away. One of the soldiers grabbed the next phone and reported the sighting. An officer listened to the news, but he remembered that U.S. planes were due that morning from California. He figured those planes accounted from the blip on the radar screen. Don't worry about it, he said. Twice danger signals were spotted. Twice they were ignored. Later, the military would deeply regret those mistakes. Meanwhile, the first wave of Japanese fighter planes drew steadily closer to Oahu. By 7:30, the second wave of planes was also in the air. Altogether, there were 353 enemy planes. Everything was going according to plan, so Commander Fuchida had reason to worry. A cloud cover lay over the island. Oh. That would make it hard for his pilots to find their targets. Then suddenly, the clouds broke. The coast appeared below. It would be a clear day after all, perfect for an air attack. Fuchida saw the U.S. battleships up ahead. A more favorable situation could not have been imagined. He later wrote. Fuchida radioed his pilots. 2. Attack. 2 attack. It was 7:49 a.m. Wow, those pages are really heavy. Look at those. It's like a museum, if you ask me. But it's a chapter book, you know? They're just 10 chapters. I've got to get to the next page. Whoa. Bro, it's so heavy. Goodness me. And it's still getting late, though. Alright, so let's continue. All 40 torpedo bombers flew toward the U.S. battleships. Between them were high-level bombers. Other groups of planes tore up the airfields. Buchita scanned the sky. All he saw were his own planes. No American aircraft were rushing to defend the Pacific Fleet. Tora, Tora, Tora! Buchita radioed to the Japanese Navy. Tiger, Tiger, Tiger! Tora, Tiger, Tora, Tiger, Tora, Tiger. The code word meant that they had made it into the harbor in secret. So far, so good. So far, so good. Yes! Yes! Way of the warrior. Way of the warrior. Before Japanese troops left to Pearl Harbor, Yamamoto reminded them to stay true to their Bushido Code. This ancient code laid out strict rules of conduct for warriors. They had to be loyal, do their duties, show courage and self-control, and be ready to die for Japan. Bushido warriors valued honor over their own lives. Bushido warriors also wore certain items of clothing in battle. On the morning of December 7th, pilots tied scarves around their heads. Pilots tied scarves around their heads. On each scarf was a flaming red dot. It stood for the rising sun, which was the symbol of Japan. The Japanese word for certain victory was sewn into each scarf. Around their waists, some of the pilots tied a belt of 1,000 stitches for good luck. The belts were made by Japanese women, each sewing one stitch until there were 1,000. And we could stop here, and we'll continue this tomorrow.